What would you do if the smallest sound in the snow refused to let you walk away? Sergeant Warren Pike Alder found one frozen German Shepherd puppy near a closed mountain road. But the puppy, Harbor, kept looking back toward the ridge as if the rescue was not finished. What Warren uncovered was not just a broken crate, but a town that had learned to ignore quiet warnings. As the storm closed in on Cedarfall Ridge, every small sign began pointing the same way. And this time, listening early might be the only reason everyone made it home. Tell us where you're watching from, share your thoughts, and please like and subscribe to help us reach 5 zeros in subscribers so we can keep writing more stories like this. Before daylight reached Cedarfall Ridge, the mountain looked almost gentle. Snow covered the northern Vermont slopes in clean white layers, softening the roof lines of the old timber cabins, the parking lots, the hand-painted trail signs, and the narrow roads curling toward the lodge. The pines stood heavy and still, their branches bowed under the night's fresh fall. From a distance, the resort looked like something built for postcards and quiet holidays. Sergeant Warren Pike Alder knew better. Winter had a way of making danger look beautiful. It hid broken branches under powder. It filled old tire ruts until roads looked smooth. It softened the edges of bad decisions until men could pretend nothing was wrong. Warren arrived before sunrise, his dark navy police jacket zipped to his throat and his black boots leaving firm tracks across the patrol lot. At 56, he moved with the controlled economy of a man who had spent most of his life answering calls in weather that made other people stay home. He was tall, broad through the shoulders, still athletic, but there was nothing flashy in the way he carried himself. His short dark brown hair was cut close in a police style, and very short stubble shadowed his jaw. His blue-gray eyes rarely wandered, they measured. A black wristwatch sat tight on his left wrist, its scratched face catching a faint gleam from the lodge lights. The watch was the only thing on him that looked older than his uniform. He touched it once before entering the ski patrol room, not as a habit anyone else would notice, but as if checking whether time had kept its promise. Inside, the room smelled of coffee, waxed skis, damp gloves, and old wood heat. A wall map of Cedarfall Ridge took up the far side, marked with colored pins, trail notes, wind arrows, and closure lines. Green meant open. Yellow meant caution. Red meant someone with sense had won an argument. Warren stepped closer to the map and studied North Lantern Bowl. The steep bowl curved beyond the main tourist runs, beautiful in clear weather and unforgiving in bad. Overnight wind had pushed snow across the upper ridge and loaded the bowl unevenly. Warren had seen enough winter terrain to distrust smooth surfaces. He had worked K-9 search and rescue before he became the town's winter safety liaison. He knew tracks, scent, wind, and the strange silence that came before something shifted. But snowpack decisions belonged to ski patrol. Nora Kittredge stood near the map with a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a red avalanche probe leaning against the table beside her. She was 46, lean and weathered in the way mountain people became when they stopped caring. Weather cold made them look tired. Her ash-blonde hair was tucked under a dark beanie, and her face held the blunt calm of someone who had argued with both guests and weather and preferred the weather. North Lantern stays closed past the upper rim, Warren said. Nora tapped the map with one finger. Technically, I'd keep the traverse closed too. Wind loading's ugly. That's a recommendation? Warren asked. That's me being polite before coffee. Before Warren could answer, Pierce Hallowell entered from the hallway with his Navy resort manager jacket, spotless and zipped high. At 52, Pierce was lean, pale-eyed, carefully groomed, and too tidy for a morning that had already put snow on everyone else. He carried a tablet in one hand and turned a silver money clip between the fingers of the other. "Let's be careful with language," Pierce said. "Closed sounds dramatic." Nora looked at him over her cup. "Closed sounds accurate." Pierce's smile stayed in place, but only because he forced it to. "We have a full weekend. Investors arrive at noon. Every room is booked. If guests hear North Lantern is closed again, they start asking what else is unsafe." Warren kept his eyes on the map. "Better they ask questions in the lodge than need help on the slope." "That's not fair." "No," Warren said. "The mountain isn't." The room went quiet except for the low tick of the heater. Pierce's fingers tightened around the money clip. Warren had seen that motion before. It was not greed, not exactly. It was fear polished until it looked like management. Cedarfall Ridge was not a luxury resort with glass towers and spa packages. It was the winter engine of a small town. Cooks, cleaners, mechanics, shuttle drivers, ski instructors, diner owners, plow operators. Half of Cedarfall depended on the season going well. Pierce knew that. Warren knew it too. Knowing it did not change the snow. "Market caution," Pierce said. "Keep guests off the outer bowl, reassess after first sweep, and avoid alarmist phrasing over open channels." Nora set her coffee down. "That is not the same as a closure." "No," Warren said. "It's not." Pierce turned toward him. "Sergeant, I respect your history here. Everyone does. But we cannot run this mountain on old fears." Warren's jaw tightened. He did not answer quickly. Old fears. People liked that phrase when they wanted a warning to sound like a personal problem. Years ago, in another winter, Warren had heard his K9 alert before the rest of the team understood what was coming. The dog had stopped, stiffened, and looked toward a white slope that seemed harmless. Warren had reported it. He had said the terrain felt wrong. He had not pushed harder. He had let men above him decide that the risk was acceptable. The dog never came back. Since then, Warren had trusted procedure, because procedure did not ask to be loved. Reports could be filed, lines could be drawn, evidence could be logged. Affection was harder. Affection made a man reach too late and remember too long. His thumb brushed the edge of the scratched watch. "Nora makes the technical call," he said at last. "I'll support the public safety side." Pierce looked relieved until Nora said, "Then my technical call is no guests past the North Lantern Traverse." Pierce's relief disappeared. By 7, the resort had begun to wake. Adults in bright jackets crossed the base area with skis over their shoulders. Lodge windows glowed amber. Coffee steamed from paper cups. A shuttle coughed in the cold near the front loop. Snow fell lightly enough to seem harmless. Warren left the patrol room with his body camera on, radio clipped to his shoulder, and duty belt settled under his winter jacket. He took the maintenance track toward the upper service edge of North Lantern Bowl, driving slow past lift towers, snow fences, and rope lines that snapped faintly in the wind. The higher he climbed, the quieter the world became. At the outer rim, he cut the engine and stepped off. North Lantern Bowl opened below him in a wide white curve, its surface broken by scattered spruce, exposed rock, and the dark ribs of a fallen pine. The small overnight slide near the edge was not dramatic. It had not thundered down the mountain or swallowed a run. It was just a rough spill of snow and branches, the kind of thing a busy resort could explain away before breakfast. Warren did not like it. He moved along the edge, scanning, listening. Fine snow ticked against his jacket. Wind pressed through the pines. Somewhere far below, a lift cable groaned into motion. Then he heard it. At first it was so faint he thought it might have been the memory of sound. He stopped, held his breath, turned his head slightly toward the fallen pine. There it was again. Not a voice. Not a crack in the snow. A breath, small broken, almost gone. Warren's whole body narrowed into focus. He clicked his radio. "Dispatch, this is Alder. I have a possible live sound near North Lantern outer debris. Service edge below marker 7. Unknown source. I'm marking position and investigating." Static answered first. Then a dispatcher confirmed. Warren switched on his body camera check, planted a red marker flag, and knelt near the root hollow of the fallen pine. He did not dig straight down. That was how people collapsed the only space a living thing had left. Instead, he cleared from the side, slow and shallow, first with a compact shovel, then with gloved hands. Snow came away in soft layers. Under it, something black appeared. Plastic. Warren cleared more and found the cracked corner of a hard transport crate wedged between root and stone. One side had split. A strip of faded blue plastic clung to a frayed nylon cord near the hinge. There were markings on it, but snow and dirt had blurred them into almost nothing. The breath came again from behind the crate. Warren reached carefully into the hollow. His fingers found cold fur. For 1 second the past rose so fast he nearly pulled back. A dog's last look, a slope too white, a warning made small by men who wanted the day to go on. Then the fur beneath his hand moved, alive. Warren widened the opening and eased the small body free. A German shepherd puppy slid into his arms, black and tan beneath the snow, muzzle dark, eyes barely open. One ear tried weakly to stand. The other folded at the tip. The puppy was so cold it seemed less like an animal than a question Winter had forgotten to finish asking. "Easy," Warren whispered. "I've got you." The puppy made no real sound. Its chest moved faintly against his hand. Warren keyed his radio. "Dispatch, I have one live German Shepherd puppy. Hypothermic. Found beside damaged transport crate and possible tie material. Notify Dr. Whitcomb and Animal Control. I'm bringing him down." He unzipped his jacket and tucked the puppy inside against his chest. The cold rushed through the opening, sharp and immediate, but Warren barely noticed. The puppy's head sagged against his uniform, then shifted once, weakly, toward the ridge behind them. Warren looked back at North Lantern Bowl. The slope was silent, too silent. At the resort medical room, Dr. Maren Lyle Whitcomb was already waiting with towels, warm packs, and a canvas veterinary bag. She was 44, steady-handed, with chestnut-brown hair tied low, and a sage-green waterproof coat dusted with snow. She did not waste time asking the wrong questions. "On the table," she said. Warren laid the puppy down under the heat lamp. Maren moved with quiet precision, checking temperature, gums, breathing, responsiveness. Her face softened only after her hands had done their work. "Male," she said. 4, maybe 5 months. Severe cold stress, but he has a chance if we warm him slowly." Luke Danton Bell hovered at the doorway in an orange patrol vest, sandy hair curling under a gray beanie, his usual grin gone uncertain. "A puppy up there?" Warren placed the frayed nylon cord and blue plastic strip into an evidence bag. Beside a cracked crate, Maren looked at the strip, and something in her expression cooled. "That doesn't look like a normal collar tag." "No," Warren said, before anyone could say more. Rhea Fallon Briggs from Animal Control arrived with a metal clipboard tucked under one arm. She was short, solid, and practical, her dark green county parka carrying more snow than decoration. She took one look at the puppy, then at the evidence bag. "I'll start intake," she said. "Living victim first, paperwork second." "But we do both." Warren respected her immediately. Pierce came in 10 minutes later. He stopped just inside the door, careful not to step in melted snow. His pale eyes moved from the puppy to the evidence bag, then to Warren. "I heard there was an animal incident," he said. Warren turned slowly. A puppy was found in restricted terrain beside a damaged transport crate. Pierce lifted one hand. "And we will cooperate fully, but until there's confirmation, I'd prefer we avoid terms like abandoned or illegal transport. Guests are already sensitive to closures." Maren's hand paused on the towel around the puppy. Rhea looked up from her clipboard. Warren held Pierce's gaze. "You're worried about guests. I'm worried about this mountain surviving the weekend." The puppy was trying to survive the morning. Pierce's mouth tightened. For a moment, his manager's polish cracked, and Warren saw the exhausted man underneath. Then Pierce looked away. "Keep the report factual," he said. "No speculation." "That's the plan," Warren replied. But as Pierce left, Warren looked down at the blue plastic strip sealed in the evidence bag. It was small enough to ignore. So were most warnings at first. The puppy stirred under the towel. One amber-brown eye opened a little wider. Luke cleared his throat. "He needs a name." Maren gave him a look. "He needs warmth, fluids, and not to be turned into a patrol mascot in the first hour." After that, Luke said softly, "A name." Warren should have ignored it. Naming was a door. He had spent years keeping doors closed. But the puppy's nose pressed against the towel, and Warren thought of the hollow beneath the fallen pine, the small pocket that had held just enough air against the cold, a shelter, a place where life had waited. "Harbor," he said. No one joked. The puppy's folded ear twitched. Outside the medical room window, North Lantern Bowl disappeared and reappeared behind drifting snow. Harbor did not look at the people around him for long. His weak head turned toward the glass, toward the white slope beyond the lodge lights. Warren followed his gaze. He had brought one life down from the mountain, but the mountain was still silent, and Harbor was still listening. Warren carried Harbor out, through the side entrance of the resort medical room, away from the lodge windows and the guests who were still laughing over coffee, lift tickets, and the kind of winter morning that looked harmless from behind glass. The puppy was wrapped in 2 warm towels and a gray fleece blanket that Maren had pressed into Warren's arms with the seriousness of handing over evidence. "Slow warmth," she said. Not too much food, a little water at a time. Watch his breathing. If he trembles harder, calls out, stops responding, or his gums change color, you call me. I heard you the first time. You heard me, Marin said, tightening the blanket around Harbor's small body. But I know men like you. You think instructions become optional if you're worried enough. Warren looked at her. Marin did not look away. Snow had loosened a few strands of chestnut hair from her low tie, and her sage-green coat was still open over the gray fleece beneath it. She looked tired, but not uncertain. Warren trusted tired people more than cheerful ones. Tired people usually knew what things cost. Rhea Fallon Briggs stood beside the door, with her metal clipboard tucked against her chest. The animal control intake tag had already been fastened to Harbor's temporary crate, and the cracked transport crate, nylon cord, and blue plastic strip had been logged, photographed, and handed off properly. Emergency foster custody, Rhea reminded him. Not adoption, not ownership, not a promise you can make without paperwork. I wasn't making promises. Rhea's hazel eyes moved to Harbor, then back to Warren. People rarely know when they start. Warren had no answer for that. The drive to his cabin took 12 minutes in clear weather and almost 20 that morning. The road climbed behind Cedarfall Ridge, through dark pines and wind-blown snow, past a frozen drainage ditch and an old split-rail fence half buried under white. Warren kept the heater low and steady, as Marin had ordered. Harbor lay inside the padded crate on the passenger seat, small beneath the blanket, his breathing shallow, but more even than it had been under the heat lamp. Twice the puppy shifted. Twice Warren moved one hand from the wheel and rested his gloved fingers against the crate. "You're all right," he said the first time. The second time he caught the words before they came out again. His cabin waited at the edge of the timber, square, clean, and plain. The porch had been shoveled before sunrise. The boot tray sat by the door. A police radio charged on the small table near the kitchen. His jackets hung in order. Duty jacket, insulated winter shell. Old gray work coat he wore when he had no reason to be seen. Nothing in the cabin was out of place, because Warren had built his life around keeping things where they belonged. Harbor did not belong there. That was what Warren told himself as he set the crate near the wood stove, adjusted the blanket, placed water within reach, and taped Marin's handwritten instructions to the cabinet above the sink. He read them twice. Then he read them again because reading instructions was easier than looking at the puppy too long. The stove clicked. The wind moved along the north wall with a low, dragging sound. Outside, the pines bent and lifted, as if breathing with the mountain. Harbor slept through most of the afternoon. Warren filled out the foster log because Rhea had made it clear that "I remembered" was not an acceptable medical record. Time, temperature of room, water offered, water taken, breathing, response, notes. He wrote in block letters, clean and factual. 5:40 p.m. Pup resting, breathing steady, no food yet. He stopped at the word pup. He scratched it out and wrote Harbor. Then he stared at the correction longer than he should have. On the shelf behind him, half hidden by a wooden box, sat the old collar. He had not touched it in years. Brown leather, darkened by weather and time, the metal ring worn smooth. It had belonged to a dog that understood silence better than most men understood speech. Warren turned away from it. At 7:12 p.m., Harbor woke. He did not bark. He did not whine in a way that filled the room. The sound was smaller than that, a weak scrape of breath, followed by the faint drag of claws against the crate floor. Warren set down his coffee and knelt. "You need water." Harbor lifted his head with effort. One ear twitched, the other folded back against his skull. His amber eyes were clearer than they had been at the resort, but they were not focused on Warren. They were fixed past him, toward the front door. Warren looked over his shoulder. Nothing moved. The deadbolt was locked. The porch light was on. Snow drifted across the steps in thin silver lines. Harbor pressed one paw forward, then another. His body trembled under the blanket, but he tried to crawl toward the crate door. "No," Warren said quietly. "You're not going anywhere." The puppy stopped only because he lacked the strength to continue. He lowered his head, breathing through his nose, but his eyes stayed on the door. Warren sat back on his heels. A gust struck the cabin from the direction of North Lantern Bowl. The wall gave a soft groan. Harbor's head lifted again. This time, Warren felt it before he admitted he had noticed it. Not a supernatural warning, not a miracle, just pattern. Wind from the north, the puppy waking, eyes to the door, body trying to go where it could not possibly survive. "You remember up there," Warren murmured. Harbor blinked slowly. "That's all this is." The puppy's paw scraped once against the crate floor. Warren had heard that kind of insistence before, not from a puppy. From a trained dog holding point when every human wanted to move on. From a partner who could not explain the world in words, but could still refuse to be wrong. He stood too quickly. "Enough," he said, though Harbor had done nothing deserving the word. The cabin went still after that. Warren forced himself through routine. Water, log, temperature, firewood, radio check, lock, window, lock again. Near midnight he sat in the chair across from the crate instead of going to bed. The old collar remained behind him on the shelf, and he could feel its presence as sharply as if it had weight in the room. Harbor slept for 40 minutes, woke when the wind shifted, and tried again to crawl toward the door. This time, Warren did not tell him no right away. He opened the crate just enough to place a hand against the puppy's chest, careful, steady, warm. Harbor leaned weakly into the touch, but his gaze stayed fixed on the dark window. "I brought you down," Warren said. That's what I could do. The words should have ended there. Instead, in the quiet that followed, they sounded like an excuse. By morning, Warren had not slept. He drove Harbor back to the resort medical room with the Foster log on the passenger seat and a feeling behind his ribs he refused to name. Cedarfall Ridge looked brighter in daylight. Snow sparkled on the lodge roof. Adults in ski jackets lined up near the lift. A man laughed too loudly while trying to carry 2 pairs of skis and a tray of coffees. At the base loop, a shuttle door opened and closed, releasing people into the cold. The mountain was awake now, which made it easier for people to stop listening. Marin was waiting in the medical room with fresh towels and a thermometer tucked into one pocket. Nora Kittredge stood near the counter, red patrol jacket open, studying still frames from Warren's body camera on a tablet. She did not look up when Warren entered. "That crate didn't ride down naturally," Nora said. "Good morning to you too," Marin said. Nora ignored that. She zoomed in on the image. "Look at the position. Root hollow here, service edge here. If it had come from the bowl, it would have been broken differently or buried deeper. This looks like it was near Sable Mill access before the slide pushed snow over it." Warren set Harbor's crate on the floor. "Sable Mill hasn't been active in years." "Not for guests," Nora said. "Maintenance still uses the lower gate when they want to move equipment without crossing the base area." Marin opened Harbor's crate and checked him with the practiced gentleness of someone who knew speed could frighten a weak animal. Harbor allowed her hands, though his eyes kept shifting toward the window whenever the wind pressed against the glass. "He's stronger than yesterday," Marin said. "Not safe. Stronger." Warren handed over the Foster log. Marin read the first page, then the second. Her expression changed slightly at the crossed-out word. "You named him in the log," she said. "It's his name." "I didn't say it wasn't." Deputy Sheriff Celia Brant Rowe arrived before Warren could respond. She came in without hurry, brushing snow from the shoulders of her tan winter jacket. She was 48, solid in posture and economical in movement, with dark hair cut blunt at the nape and a yellow waterproof notebook already in her hand. Celia had the kind of calm that did not warm a room, but did make it stand straighter. She looked at Harbor first, then at Warren. "Walk me through it from the moment you heard the sound." Warren did. Celia listened without interrupting. She asked for times, radio confirmations, body camera status, who handled the crate, who bagged the cord, who had access to the medical room, and whether anyone from resort management touched the evidence. "No," Warren said. "Pierce saw it. Didn't touch it." Celia wrote that down. "Good." Nora shifted beside the counter. "There's a chance the crate was near Sable Mill access before the slide." "A chance," Celia repeated. "A strong one." Celia nodded once. Strong chances don't become clean evidence by being emotionally satisfying. Warren felt the edge in that, though her voice stayed level. "I know how evidence works." "I know you do," Celia said. "That's why I'm saying this plainly. If this is animal dumping, illegal use of the service road, or unlawful transport, we need it clean. No confronting maintenance. No walking into storage sheds because a gut feeling points that way. No collecting loose items without a location photo and a witness. No turning a rescue into a case a defense attorney can pick apart. The words settled hard in Warren's chest. Marin looked at him, not warning, not pleading, just present. Celia softened by half a degree. You saved a life yesterday. Don't make it harder to prove who put him there. Before Warren could answer, Pierce Hallowell appeared at the doorway. His navy jacket was as clean as before, but his face had lost some of its morning polish. I was told the sheriff's office was here. Celia turned. Deputy Rowe, we're taking a preliminary report. Of course, Pierce said. Cedarfall will cooperate fully. I only ask that all public communication go through the resort office until facts are confirmed. We can't have rumors spreading through the lodge. Warren stared at him. Rumors? Pierce held up a hand. Sergeant, please, I'm not minimizing the puppy, but one wrong phrase can become a headline by lunch. From the hallway behind Pierce came the smell of coffee and fried onions. Mavis Holt Greer had arrived with a box of breakfast sandwiches balanced in both hands. She was 62, broad-shouldered and practical, with silver gray hair pinned low and a dark red apron showing beneath her heavy tan coat. Mavis ran the diner below the resort, the one every plow driver, lift mechanic, and ski instructor trusted before sunrise. She paused when she saw the room. Well, she said, this looks like the kind of quiet that costs money. No one laughed. Mavis set the box on the counter and looked at Warren. I heard about the dog. I'm glad he's breathing, I am. But I'm asking you, Warren, don't set fire to the whole mountain before you know where the smoke came from. Marin's eyes narrowed slightly. A puppy was found under snow. And that matters, Mavis said. So do the 37 people who lose hours if this place empties out. So do the dishwashers, the shuttle drivers, the woman who cleans rooms with 2 mortgages on her back. I'm not saying hide anything. I'm saying be sure. Warren wanted to dislike her for that. He could not. Fear wore different uniforms in Cedarfall. Pierce's was navy and polished. Mavis's smelled like coffee and winter bread. Harbor made a small sound from the crate. Everyone turned. The puppy had lifted his head. He was not pawing at the door this time. He was looking at Warren, not pleading, not panicked. Tired, yes. Weak, yes. But steady in a way that made the room feel smaller. Warren had no proof of what that look meant. He only knew it felt like being asked whether he planned to stop at one life because one life was easier to explain. He stepped back from the table. I'll keep it clean, he said to Celia. Pierce exhaled as if that meant relief. Warren looked at him. That doesn't mean I'll keep it quiet. No one spoke after that. A little later, Warren carried Harbor back to the patrol vehicle. The puppy slept in the crate, exhausted by the exam and the argument he could not understand. Snow had brightened the whole resort by then, turning every roofline sharp and shining. North Lantern Bowl rose beyond the lodge, white and distant, beautiful enough to forgive itself for anything. Warren sat behind the wheel without starting the engine. He did not have enough to accuse anyone, not Pierce, not maintenance, not a stranger with a truck. He had a cracked crate, a frayed cord, a blue plastic strip, an old service road, and a puppy who kept listening to a mountain everyone else wanted to call quiet. His black wristwatch ticked against his sleeve. For the first time in years, Warren did not wish the old instinct would leave him alone. He only wished it would be wrong. Morning came to Cedarfall Ridge too bright. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the mountain polished in white and silver. Sunlight struck the upper trees and broke into clean sparks across the frozen branches. From the lodge below, the slopes looked calm enough for brochures, the kind of calm that made visitors lift their phones and call winter beautiful. Sergeant Warren Pike Alder stood beside the patrol snowmobile and checked his body camera twice, not because he doubted the equipment, because Celia Brant Rowe had been right. If this became an investigation, memory would not be enough. Instinct would not be enough. A rescued puppy would not be enough. Whatever the mountain still held, it had to be found in a way that could survive questions later. Nora Kittredge was already fastening her rescue pack. Red ski patrol jacket zipped under her chin. Avalanche probe clipped along the side. She looked toward North Lantern Bowl without speaking. That was how Warren knew she disliked what she saw. Nora only explained danger when someone needed convincing. When she went quiet, she was already counting risks. Luke Danton Bell stood behind her with marker flags and a coil of lightweight rope slung across one shoulder. His orange patrol vest looked too bright against the snow, but his face had lost its usual easy grin. Dr. Maren Lyle Whitcomb arrived last, carrying a compact medical pack and a collapsible animal carrier. Her sage coat was dusted with fresh powder, and her hair was tied low at the back of her neck. She nodded once to Warren. "How's Harbor?" he asked before he could stop himself. "Sleeping," Maren said. "Still weak, still stubborn. Rhea is with him." Warren accepted that with a short nod, though the answer lodged somewhere deeper than he wanted it to. His radio cracked. "Row to Alder. Confirm team and purpose." Warren keyed the mic. "Alder to Row. Team is myself, Kittredge, Bell, and Dr. Whitcomb. Returning to North Lantern outer debris for documented search near original recovery site. Body cam active. Patrol cam active. Kittredge has safety lead." Celia's voice came back steady. "Copy. Updates every 10 minutes. You find anything, photograph before touching unless there is a living animal in immediate need." "Understood." There was a brief pause. "And Warren?" He looked up at the white ridge. "Keep it clean." He almost smiled. "Almost." "Copy." They moved up the maintenance track slowly, the snowmobiles climbing past lift towers and closed rope lines. Down below, Cedarfall Ridge was beginning another workday. Adults carried skis across the base area. A shuttle rolled toward the lodge. Smoke lifted from the diner chimney near the lower road. Everything looked ordinary from a distance. Up close, ordinary disappeared. At the edge of North Lantern Bowl, Nora raised one gloved hand and stopped them. "No one steps above my line," she said. "We work the lower edge only. If I say back, nobody asks why." Luke gave a small salute. "Yes, Mom. I mean you too, Warren." "I heard you." "I know," Nora said. "I'm checking whether you listened." That would have annoyed him on another morning. Today it steadied the team. Nora cut a shallow test line with her snow saw near the edge and studied the layers. She did not make a performance of it. She pressed, scraped, watched the slab respond, then pointed with 2 fingers toward the fallen pine. "Loose debris on the side. Better than the center, but not friendly. Move where I step." They followed her tracks. The mountain was beautiful in a way that felt almost unfair. Snow clung to the spruce needles. Thin ice shone on exposed rock. The lodge below looked small and harmless, a warm wooden thing tucked into white slopes and blue morning shadow. But near the fallen pine, beauty became evidence. Warren saw the first sign before anyone spoke. A line in the snow, almost gone. Not an animal track, not a ski mark. Something had dragged across the surface before the newest powder settled over it. He lifted his camera. Possible drag mark, lower side of Root Hollow. Photographing before approach. Luke planted a small flag beside the area, careful not to step over it. Nora crouched and brushed snow from the edge with the back of her glove. "This didn't come from uphill naturally," she said. "See the angle? It cuts toward the service road." Warren filmed the direction, then turned toward the faint line of Sable Mill access beyond the trees. The old service route was barely visible beneath the new snow, a narrow white depression curving behind the spruce stand. Guests would never notice it. Someone who worked the mountain would. Maren found the next piece. She was kneeling beside a low branch when her hand paused above the snow. "Warren." He stepped closer without entering her footprint path. A frayed piece of pale nylon cord had caught on the branch, stiff with ice. It matched the cord from Harbor's recovery site. Warren documented it. Luke marked it. Nora watched the slope. Nobody spoke more than necessary. A few yards farther, Warren found the blue plastic. It was half frozen against a root, the color dull beneath a skin of ice, small, disposable, easy to lose, easy to dismiss. He zoomed in with the body camera before Celia's voice came over the radio again. "Status, Alder to Row. We have additional nylon cord and a second blue plastic strip near original site, both photographed in place. No collection yet. Copy. Continue documentation. Watch your footing." Maren looked at the blue strip through the clear evidence sleeve Warren held open but did not yet seal. "That kind of marker is too cheap for proper medical tracking," she said quietly. "Temporary sorting, maybe." "Sorting for what?" Luke asked. Maren did not answer right away. That silence was enough. Warren felt the old anger try to rise, cold and clean. He pushed it down. Anger could move a man fast. It could not make a record trustworthy. He glanced at Nora. "How long do we have?" Nora looked up toward the rim. "Long enough if we stay smart. Not long enough if we get sentimental." Warren nodded. Then Luke, who had stepped near the edge of the service road, raised one hand. Tire impressions. They were faint, softened by new snow, but visible where the old access road dipped beneath the trees. 2 parallel compressions, not fresh enough to identify on their own, not clean enough for a courtroom by themselves, but too aligned to ignore. Warren photographed them from multiple angles with a scale marker. Nora added a patrol reference point. Luke marked the outer edge and wrote the time on a tag. Marin stood back, watching the hollow beneath the fallen pine. She was the first to hear it. Not a cry, a breath. Marin's face changed before she spoke. Her eyes sharpened, and all the professional calm in her became something almost fierce. "Stop." Everyone froze. Wind moved through the trees. A small drift slid from a branch and fell soundlessly beside Luke's boot. "There," Marin whispered, "left of the root mass." Warren lowered himself slowly. Nora moved beside him and studied the snow above the hollow. "Do not dig down through the top. There may be a pocket underneath. Side entry only." Warren's throat tightened. One living puppy could be called luck by people who wanted to avoid responsibility. Another sound beneath the same roots could not. He clicked his radio. Alder to row. Possible live sound located left of original root hollow. Beginning careful side access. Medical on scene. Celia answered at once. "Copy. Rescue takes priority. Keep body cam active." Warren removed the compact shovel from his pack. He cut into the side of the drift in slow, shallow movements. Luke anchored the light rope behind him and passed a small hand tool forward. Nora kept one eye on the slope, one on the opening. Marin knelt close enough to hear, far enough not to crowd the space. "It's all right," she said softly toward the snow. "Stay with us. We're here." The words were not dramatic. They were not meant for anyone watching. They were just sound. Warm and human, entering a place where cold had taken nearly everything else. Warren cleared another layer, then another. The side wall opened into darkness beneath the roots. A small black nose appeared first. It moved. Marin inhaled sharply but did not reach past Warren. He widened the opening, careful not to collapse the pocket. Snow fell away in soft chunks. Beneath it, a German shepherd puppy lay curled against another body, then another. Then a fourth shape pressed so tightly into the corner that at first Warren thought it was only shadow. 4. For a moment no one moved, not because they were uncertain, because the number itself needed a second to become real. Marin recovered first. Carrier, warm towels. Luke scrambled without fumbling, his face pale beneath the cold. Nora shifted to block the wind with her body while Warren eased the first puppy out. Dark sable coat, stiff with snow, chest barely moving. Marin wrapped him and checked him with fast, gentle hands. Breathing. The word moved through Warren like heat. The second puppy had a darker collar of fur around the neck. The third had a pale chest, almost cream beneath the ice. The fourth was the smallest, but when Warren lifted it free, the tiny head tried to rise as if pride had survived where strength had nearly failed. Marin's eyes shone, but her hands never shook. Cold stress. Dehydration. Weak response, she said. But they're alive. Luke turned away for half a second, pressing one gloved hand against his mouth. When he turned back, he forced a breath and held the carrier open. Warren counted again. 1, 2, 3, 4, and Harbor made 5. The thought struck him harder than the cold. He had carried one life down from the mountain and told himself that was the mission. He had used every reasonable word: rescued, stabilized, documented, transferred. But Harbor had spent the night trying to reach a door because the mission had not ended when Warren decided it had. The puppy had not been asking for comfort. He had been asking Warren to finish counting. Nora's voice cut through the moment, low and firm. "We need to move now." That saved him from standing too long in the feeling. They secured the puppies in the warmed carrier, documented the pocket, marked the location, and withdrew along the same tracks. Warren updated Celia while Luke drove ahead slowly to clear the return route. Marin sat behind Warren on the snowmobile, one arm around the carrier, speaking softly to the bundled shapes inside as if she could hold them in the world by naming each breath. At the medical room, Rhea had towels, tags, and intake forms waiting. Harbor lay in his crate near the heater, wrapped in his blanket, eyes half closed. When the carrier came in, his head lifted. "Easy," Marin said, though no one knew whether she meant Harbor Warren or herself. She set the carrier on the floor and folded back the top blanket. Harbor tried to stand. His front legs trembled. Warren reached instinctively to steady him, but Harbor pushed forward until his nose touched the first puppy's muzzle. Then the second, then the third, then the smallest one, who tried to climb over the towel and failed. Luke whispered, "He's counting them." Warren said nothing, because he was counting too. Marin checked each puppy again and gave them temporary names for the chart before anyone had time to pretend names did not matter. Bramble for the dark ruff around the first one's neck. Flint for the stubborn one who kept lifting his head. Aspen for the pale chest. Ridge for the smallest climber who refused to stay flat. Harbor rested his muzzle beside them and closed his eyes. The room stayed quiet for a long time. When Celia arrived, she did not soften at the sight, but her silence changed. She looked at the evidence bags, the photographs, the route notes, Nora's safety log, Warren's body camera file, and the 5 puppies breathing under towels. "This is no longer an animal incident," she said. Pierce was not in the room, neither was Mavis. There was no public statement, no accusation, no dramatic confrontation. Only a deputy sheriff with a yellow notebook, a veterinarian with snow on her sleeves, a ski patrol chief who trusted layers more than promises, and a police sergeant looking at 5 small lives that had almost been erased by weather and convenience. Celia wrote one line across the top of a new page. Preliminary investigation opened. Warren looked down at Harbor, lying among the others. The question had changed. It was not simply who had left them in the snow. It was who in Cedarfall had heard something small, inconvenient, and alive, and decided it was easier not to listen. By the 4th morning, Warren's cabin no longer sounded like a place where one man lived alone. It breathed in small, uneven rhythms. 5 German Shepherd puppies slept in a warmed corner near the wood stove, their bodies tucked into towels, fleece, and the kind of careful disorder Warren had not allowed in his home for years. The boot tray had been moved. The coffee table had become a supply station. A cardboard box of syringes, soft food, clean cloths, intake tags, and Marin's written instructions sat where Warren usually kept case files. Rhea Fallon Briggs had made the arrangement official before anyone had time to call it sentimental. She arrived before sunrise in her dark green animal control parka, metal clipboard under one arm, county forms protected inside a plastic sleeve. She tagged each puppy, checked Marin's notes, confirmed the emergency foster custody order, and made Warren sign in 3 places. "Every feeding," she said, "every fluid attempt, every change in breathing, every odd behavior, write it down." Warren looked at the logbook. "You trust paper that much?" "I trust paper more than memory when people get emotional." "I don't get emotional." Rhea glanced at the 5 puppies on his floor, then at the old collar half hidden on the shelf. "No," she said. "Of course not." Marin tried not to smile and failed. Warren signed the last form. The puppies had been given temporary names at the medical room, but inside the cabin the names became harder to pretend away. Harbor slept nearest Warren's boots, as if distance from him required official permission. Bramble, the darker one with the thick shadow of fur around his neck, tucked himself close to the stove. Flint, despite being weak, had developed a private dispute with Warren's shoelaces. Aspen curled under the edge of the table, pale chest rising softly beneath the towel. Ridge, smallest of all, kept trying to climb the folded blanket stack and sliding down with quiet indignity. "They need rest," Marin said, kneeling beside Aspen. "They need a bigger room," Warren answered. "They need both." The cabin smelled of wood smoke, damp wool, warmed puppy food, and the sharp antiseptic scent of veterinary wipes. It should have irritated Warren more than it did. It did irritate him. He told himself that while measuring water, warming towels, and writing Harbor, took 2 teaspoons in the log with the seriousness of a court affidavit. Marin watched him from the kitchen doorway. "You're doing well. I'm following instructions. That is one version of doing well." He capped the pen and looked toward the window. Snow had begun falling again, light but steady, softening the line of pines outside the cabin. Beyond them, Cedarfall Ridge rose white and silent. "Celia wants statements," he said. Marin nodded. "June Bellwether Crane first?" If she recognizes the blue strip, she'll recognize it if anyone in town can. Rhea looked up from her clipboard. I'll stay with the puppies until you get back, but don't bring Harbor unless Marin clears it. Warren glanced down. Harbor had opened one amber eye. Marin sighed because she had already seen the answer forming in Warren's silence. She checked Harbor again, hand light against his chest, fingers professional and careful. Short trip, warm crate, no stress. If he starts shaking hard or goes flat, you turn around. I know. Yes, she said. You keep saying that right before making me nervous. Harbor rode in the passenger seat inside the padded crate, wrapped in a towel that smelled faintly of the clinic. He did not sleep. He watched the road through the small opening as Warren drove down from the cabin toward Cedar Falls Main Street, Marin following in her own truck behind him. The town below the resort looked like winter had built it by hand. Snow rested on the diner awning, the post office steps, the chapel roof, and the low storefronts with their painted signs. A plow moved slowly past the square. Smoke curled from chimneys. Adults in work coats crossed the street with coffee cups held close to their chests. Cedarfall was not rich, not polished, not pretending to be anything bigger than it was. That made its fear harder to dismiss. Bellwether Feed Vaupaw sat near the end of Main Street, squeezed between a hardware store and a shop that rented snowshoes to tourists who underestimated hills. A bell snapped above the door when Warren entered. The smell hit first. Cedar shavings, leather, grain, dog biscuits, old coffee, and winter coats drying too close to a heater. June Bellwether Crane stood behind the counter, sorting receipts with the authority of a judge and the patience of someone who had outlived nearly every excuse in town. She was 69, short and round in a burgundy cardigan, with a knit hat of nearly the same color pulled over white hair. Her blue eyes sharpened when she saw Warren, then softened by a degree when she noticed the crate in his arms. "So that's the little one," she said. "Harbor," Warren said. June came around the counter more slowly than her eyes moved. She did not crowd the crate. She crouched just enough to let Harbor see her, then slipped a treat back into her cardigan pocket without offering it. "Not yet," she murmured. "You've had enough surprises." Marin set a sealed photo print and an evidence copy of the blue plastic strip on the counter. "June, have you seen anything like this?" Humor left June's face. She reached for the glasses hanging from a chain around her neck and put them on. For a moment, the store went quiet except for the hum of a freezer in the back and Harbor's faint breathing from the crate. June did not touch the evidence sleeve. She only leaned close. "Blue tape," she said. "Cheap sort, not the kind I sell." Warren kept his voice even. "But you've seen it." "I've seen something close." "When?" June looked past him toward the front window, where snow softened the street and made every building seem farther away than it was. 3 months ago. Man came in asking for high-protein puppy food. Cheapest bulk I had. Marin folded her arms. For himself, said it was for a rescue litter. June's mouth tightened. People who actually run rescues ask different questions. They ask ingredients, expiration dates, donation receipts. This man asked weight and price. Name, cash, no name. Warren felt the familiar frustration rise and kept it out of his voice. Vehicle, white box truck, magnetic sign on the side, said maintenance. June tapped one finger on the counter. But the color was wrong. Marin glanced at Warren. June noticed. Cedar Falls maintenance signs are navy letters on white. This one had black letters, cheap print, peeling at the corners. I told myself maybe it was a contractor. You kept that to yourself? Warren asked. June's blue eyes cut to him. No. I told a lodge desk clerk after I heard dogs near the old Sable Mill Road one night. Warren went still. Marin's voice lowered. You heard dogs? Not close enough to count. Not loud enough to make a scene. Just enough that I didn't sleep right. June looked toward Harbor's crate. I called the next day. Desk said they'd pass it to maintenance. No one called back. The words were simple. That made them worse. Warren looked down at Harbor. The puppy had lifted his head inside the crate. Not toward the door this time, toward June. June reached to the cord around her neck and touched the brass key resting against her cardigan. Eldon Marr came in 2 days later, told me warehouse roads were resort business, and I shouldn't go listening for trouble where I didn't own property. There it was. Not proof. Not enough for a warrant by itself. Not enough to put a man in cuffs or put a headline over Pierce's office, but enough to change the air. Warren's hand moved toward his phone. Marin saw it. "Call Celia." Call her before you decide what you want to do." He looked at her. She held his gaze. "There's a difference." Warren called Celia from the sidewalk outside the store, while Marin stayed with June to write a statement. Harbor remained in the crate at Warren's feet, wrapped and watching. Celia listened without interruption. "Do not approach Eldon," she said when he finished. "I'll request gate camera access and key logs. June's statement helps, but we need records." He warned her off Sable Mill. "He used words," Celia said. "Words matter. Records matter more. You want that gate opened legally. We build it legally." Warren stared toward the distant ridge above the roofs. "He could know what happened. He probably does. And if you corner him now, he'll know exactly what to hide." That landed where she meant it to. Warren closed his eyes for 1 second. "Understood. Good," Celia said. That word works best when followed by obedience. By afternoon, the story had begun moving through town without anyone officially releasing it. A rescued puppy became 5. A cracked crate became a rumor about a truck. A rumor about a truck became someone saying Cedarfall Ridge had been hiding something. No one knew enough to be right, but everyone knew enough to be afraid. Pierce Hallowell found Warren outside the patrol entrance before the evening shift. "You went to June," Pierce said. Warren looked at him. "She had relevant information. She has opinions. She collects suspicions the way other people collect stamps. She reported hearing dogs near Sable Mill." Pierce's jaw tightened. "Do you know how many contractors, vendors, seasonal workers, delivery drivers, repair techs, and county vehicles come through this resort in a month? A truck with a sign does not make a conspiracy." "I didn't say conspiracy." "You don't have to. People hear what they're afraid of." Mavis Holt Greer arrived carrying a red thermos and a paper sack, her diner apron hidden beneath a heavy tan coat. Her cheeks were flushed from the cold, and for once she did not look ready to feed the problem into submission. "Pierce," she said quietly, "let him ask." Pierce turned, surprised. "Mavis, I said let him ask. I didn't say let the town burn itself down over gossip." She looked at Warren. "And you. Remember, there are people attached to every hour this mountain closes." "I know." "No," Mavis said. "You know it like a fact. I'm asking you to know it like a bill due Monday." Warren had no clever answer. He respected her more for making him feel the weight of it. That evening, he drove Harbor back toward the cabin by way of the lower service road. Marin had cleared the short ride again, and Rhea was waiting with the other 4 puppies. But Warren wanted to see the Sable Mill gate from the public side before dark. Looking was not confronting. Looking was allowed. The road narrowed behind the maintenance yard, where snowbanks rose in hard ridges along the plow line. The old Sable Mill access gate stood between 2 leaning posts, chained and marked with a faded sign. Beyond it, the road disappeared into timber. A man stood at the gate, Eldon Marr. Warren recognized him from resort maintenance. 60 years old, thick through the shoulders, brown canvas work coat, gray mustache, heavy boots planted wide in the snow. A large key ring hung from his belt, the keys clinking softly as he worked the lock. One key had blue tape wrapped around the head. Warren stopped the patrol vehicle. Eldon looked up. For a second, neither man moved. Then Eldon turned back to the gate and snapped the lock shut faster than he needed to. His shoulders went tight. He did not wave. He did not ask what Warren wanted. He only shoved the keys into his pocket and started toward a maintenance truck idling near the shed. Every old instinct in Warren rose at once. Step out. Ask the question. Watch his face. Press before he has time to build a lie. His hand touched the door handle. From the passenger seat, Harbor made a low, tired sound. Not a warning, not a command. Just a small breath from a dog who had already survived what impatience could ruin. The puppy's paw slid through the opening in the crate and came to rest against Warren's glove. Warren looked down at it. Then he let go of the door handle. Eldon's truck rolled away through the falling snow, red taillights fading behind the maintenance shed. Warren picked up his phone and called Celia. "I saw Eldon at Sable Mill," he said. "He had a key marked with blue tape." Celia was quiet for 1 heartbeat. "Did you approach him?" Warren watched the gate. "No." "Good." The word should not have felt like a victory. It did. Harbor lowered his head back onto the towel, exhausted. Warren sat in the patrol vehicle a moment longer, staring at the chained gate and the road beyond it. For the first time since this began, he understood that not breaking through a door could be harder than kicking one open. He put the vehicle in gear and drove back toward the cabin. The storm reached Cedarfall Ridge, dressed like a gift. It came down soft at first, fine white snow drifting past the lodge windows, while the morning lights glowed warm against the glass. Guests stepped out onto the wooden deck, with coffee in their hands, smiling up at the sky as if winter had arranged itself for them. The pines behind the lodge wore fresh white on every branch. The lift chairs moved slowly through a pale curtain of flakes. Down near the lower road, Mavis Holt Greer's diner shone with yellow windows, and the smell of coffee and buttered toast slipped out each time the door opened. To visitors, it was beautiful. To Nora Kittredge, it was wait. She stood outside the ski patrol room, with her red jacket zipped tight, face tilted toward the upper ridge. Snow dusted the shoulders of her coat and caught on the edge of her goggles. She had been quiet since sunrise, and Warren had learned that Nora's silence was never empty. Luke Danton Bell came up from the lift yard, stamping snow from his boots. His orange carabiner clicked at his hip, quick and nervous. "Lower chairs are running slow," he said. "Guests are calling it charming." Nora did not look at him. Guests call anything charming until they have to walk through it. Warren stood beside the map wall, dark navy police jacket open over his uniform, radio mic clipped near his shoulder. His eyes moved from North Lantern Bowl to the lower access route marked Hollow Pass Road. It curved beneath a tree-thin slope before reaching the resort parking loops. On paper, it was just a road. In winter, it was a decision waiting to be made. "Hollow Pass?" Warren asked. Nora tapped the map once. "Wind's pushing load onto that shoulder. The upper bowl worries me, but Hollow Pass worries me more." "Sensor. Rising," Luke said, checking the tablet. "Not over threshold. Threshold is a line on a screen," Nora said. "Snow doesn't care where we draw lines." Pierce Hallowell entered with his tablet under one arm and his silver money clip already moving between his fingers. His Navy resort jacket looked less polished than usual. One side of his collar sat higher than the other, and his ash-blonde hair had fallen out of place at the front. "What now?" he asked. Nora pointed at Hollow Pass. "We need a field check." Pierce's mouth tightened. "The access road?" "The slope above it," Warren said. "Guests are arriving all morning. We have investors due by noon. If we start talking about the access road, people will think they're trapped. They might be safer thinking early," Warren said, than realizing late. Pierce looked from Warren to Nora. "Check it. Do not announce anything. Do not stop traffic unless there is an actual closure order." Nora picked up her probe pack. "If the snow gives me a reason, I'll give you more than an announcement." The ride to Hollow Pass was short, but the world changed along the way. At the lodge, snow looked decorative. On the road, it moved sideways in hard silver sheets, driven by wind coming over the ridge. The plow banks rose higher than the hood of Warren's patrol vehicle. Ahead, the road narrowed where the slope leaned over it, half hidden by spruce and birch. Warren parked below the shoulder, leaving the emergency lights off. Nora stepped out first and held up one hand, setting the line before anyone else moved. "No one goes above the cut. Luke, mark from the road edge. Warren, stay where I can see you." "I'm still police," Warren said. "Then follow instructions like a responsible adult." Luke almost smiled, but the sound died when the snow beneath Nora's boot gave a low, hollow thump. Not loud, not dramatic. Warren felt it through the soles of his boots a heartbeat later. Whumph! Luke went still. "That was under us? Under the slab," Nora said. She crouched near the road cut and brushed away the new powder. Beneath it, a thin crack ran through the crust, no wider than a pencil line. It connected to another small fracture near a buried rock, then disappeared under wind-blown snow. A tourist driving by would never see it. A manager looking out from an office would call it nothing. Warren filmed it anyway. "Nora?" She did not answer until she had checked the layer with her snow saw. Weak layer under fresh load. It's not a full failure yet, but it's talking. Luke planted a marker and looked up at the slope. "I found another crack." Warren's radio crackled before he could respond. "Marin to Alder." He lifted the mic. "Alder." Her voice was controlled but not calm. "You need to come back to medical when you can. The puppies are reacting to something." Warren looked toward Nora. Pierce's voice cut in on the resort channel before Warren could answer. Reacting how? There was a pause. Marin chose her words carefully. Restless. All 5 at once. Harbor is on his feet. Warren felt something close inside his chest. Harbor was not strong enough to waste strength. Nora took the radio from her shoulder. Marin, did the wind hit the north windows just before they reacted? Yes. Nora looked toward the slope above Hollow Pass. Her face did not change, but her eyes sharpened. Copy. Pierce's voice came through tighter. We are not basing road decisions on puppies. No, Warren said into the radio, looking at the crack beneath his boots. We're basing them on snow, terrain, road exposure, rising sensor data, and a field observation of slab instability. And the puppies, Luke muttered. Nora gave him a look. Luke cleared his throat. And not the puppies. They returned to the lodge fast but controlled. The medical room had become warmer than any other room in the building, not because of temperature, but because everything in it was trying to live. Towels lined the floor. Heat packs sat under folded blankets. Ria's tags hung from the temporary crates. Marin knelt beside Harbor, one hand steadying him at the chest. Harbor stood on trembling legs, his amber eyes fixed toward the north side of the lodge. Bramble was awake beside him, head low, the dark ruff around his neck bristling slightly. Ridge had pushed himself halfway over a towel and kept trying to climb, though his body was too weak for the effort. Flint made a small, frustrated sound from inside his blanket. Aspen had tucked herself into the shadow under the lower shelf, pale chest moving quickly. Marin looked up. They started when the gust hit the windows. Could be sound, Nora said. Could be vibration. Could be memory tied to wind direction. Not magic, Warren said. No, Marin replied, not magic. But not nothing. Pierce stood in the doorway, phone in hand. This is exactly how panic starts. Someone says the animals feel something, and 10 minutes later guests are filming in the lodge like it's the end of the world. Warren looked at Harbor. The dog's paw slid forward and came to rest on Warren's black glove lying near the crate. Not forceful, not theatrical, just contact. Pierce's voice lowered. Warren, don't do this because you need yesterday to mean something. That struck harder than Warren expected. For a moment, the room seemed to fall away. He saw the old slope from years before. The K-9 who had stopped and looked up. The report he had filed. The command he had accepted. The long years afterward when he told himself that following the chain had been the only thing he could do. Maybe Pierce meant to wound him. Maybe Pierce was only afraid. Either way, Warren did not answer from the wound. He picked up his glove, slid it on, and keyed his radio. Alder to Rowe. Celia responded almost at once. Go. I'm requesting authority to establish a temporary hold on Hollow Pass Road. County road, resort access, current field indicators, audible weak layer collapse, visible cracking near road cut, active wind loading, rising sensor trend. Ski patrol lead can confirm. Nora took her mic. Kittredge confirming. Recommend traffic hold until reassessment. Guests remain at lodge or lower base. No outbound shuttle through Hollow Pass. Celia's answer came after 3 seconds. Approved. Temporary public safety hold. Document time, reason, and personnel. Keep it orderly. Pierce closed his eyes. When he opened them, anger had replaced fear because anger was easier to stand inside. You are stranding my guests. I'm holding them away from a bad stretch of road, Warren said. You're damaging this resort. I'm protecting the people inside it. Pierce stepped closer. You think being haunted makes you wise. Warren met his eyes. No. I think ignoring warnings makes men sound confident right before they are wrong. No one moved. Then Mavis Holt Greer pushed through the hallway door with her red thermos under one arm and a stack of cardboard coffee trays in both hands. Snow clung to her tan coat. I heard road hold, she said. Pierce turned sharply. Mavis, not now. She ignored him and looked at Warren. How many people? All outbound traffic, Warren said. Possibly an hour, maybe more. Mavis breathed out through her nose. Her diner depended on that road. Her staff depended on guests leaving happy. Not frightened. Warren could see the math moving behind her eyes. Then she set the coffee trays on the counter. I'll open the kitchen line, she said. Hot soup, coffee, sandwiches. If people are stuck, we keep them fed. Pierce stared at her. Mavis pointed a finger at him. Don't look at me like that. I'm still mad. I'm just not stupid. That broke something loose in the room. Luke started moving first, calling the shuttle driver and lift desk. Nora coordinated with patrol. Celia directed a deputy to the lower road. Warren took the lobby because uniformed calm mattered in a room full of guests who did not yet know whether they should be annoyed or afraid. He did not say landslide. He did not say disaster. He did not feed the room a word it could choke on. Temporary weather hold, he told them. For everyone's safety, outbound traffic through Hollow Pass is paused while ski patrol evaluates conditions. Please remain in the lodge or designated lower buildings. Staff will assist with food, medication needs, and transportation updates. Some people complained. Some asked reasonable questions. A man in an expensive jacket wanted to know if this would affect his flight. A woman traveling with her partner asked if the shuttle would leave before dark. Warren answered what he could and refused to invent what he could not. Behind him, Mavis's diner staff arrived carrying trays. Luke guided guests away from the doors. Nora's voice came through the radio in clipped updates. Pierce stood near the front desk, pale, furious, and silent. The first shuttle had already left the upper loop when Warren's order reached the driver. "Turn it around," Warren said over the radio. The driver hesitated. "I'm 5 minutes from the pass. Turn it around now." There was static. Then, "Copy," turning back. The minutes that followed seemed longer than the whole morning. Warren stood near the lodge windows and watched snow sweep across the lower road. Harbor had been brought into the side room near medical. Too weak to be left alone in the noise, but close enough that Warren could see him through the open doorway. The puppy lay with his head on Warren's spare glove, eyes half closed. The radio cracked. Shuttle 1 returning to lodge. Luke exhaled so hard it almost became a laugh. Then the mountain spoke. There was no cinematic roar at first. Only a deep, low sound that moved through the building before anyone understood it. Glass trembled. Coffee rippled in cups. Conversation dropped away. Outside, the slope above Hollow Pass released. Snow moved through the trees in a wide white sheet, gathering speed, folding over itself, then spilling across the road beyond the lower bend. It covered the pavement where the shuttle would have been, buried the guardrail, and swallowed the orange road markers until only their tips showed. Then it stopped. The lodge went silent, not peaceful, silent in the way people become when their minds arrive a few seconds after their eyes. Warren keyed his radio. "Alder to Shuttle 1. Confirm location. Static." Then the driver's voice came back, shaken but clear. "At Lodge Loop. Passengers safe. We're clear." Celia followed. "Lower deputy confirms no vehicles in the slide area." No one cheered. Pierce stood by the window, his silver money clip hanging loose in one hand. The thing he had been turning all morning had finally stopped moving. Nora lowered her radio. She did not say she had warned them. Warren did not say it either. The mountain had said enough. Later, after guests had been settled, after the road hold became an official closure, after Mavis's soup line turned fear into something people could hold in both hands, Warren returned to the medical room. Harbor was asleep, exhausted by whatever his small body had spent trying to say. Bramble, Flint, Aspen, and Ridge lay bundled near him, breathing softly. Marin sat on the floor beside them, one hand resting on Aspen's towel. Warren crouched and placed his glove beside Harbor's nose. The puppy shifted just enough to rest his head on it. Warren looked toward the window, where Hollow Pass was hidden behind falling snow. 5 dogs had not predicted the future. They had not saved Cedarfall by miracle or mystery. They had made him pause. They had made him listen. And in a town where too many people had learned to call small warnings inconvenient, that pause had been enough. By the next morning, Cedarfall Ridge no longer belonged only to Pierce Hallowell. County vehicles sat beside the resort shuttles in the lower lot, their tires packed with snow from the road up. A sheriff's SUV idled near the maintenance yard. A temporary sign at the lodge entrance told guests that parts of the mountain remained closed for safety review. Inside, conversations had grown quieter. People still drank coffee, still checked their phones, still looked out at the white slopes, but the old holiday ease had been replaced by something more careful. The mountain had spoken where everyone could hear it. Now the paperwork had to answer. Deputy Sheriff Celia Brant Rowe took over a conference room beside the rental office and turned it into a working command space. There was no drama in the way she did it. She simply placed her yellow waterproof notebook on the table, asked for the resort safety files, maintenance logs, gate records, sensor reports, contractor list, and camera footage, then waited until Pierce understood she was not asking twice. Pierce stood near the doorway with his silver money clip in one hand. The polished manager's jacket was still on him, but it looked different after Hollow Pass. Less like authority, more like costume. "We'll provide everything relevant," he said. Celia looked up. "I'll decide what's relevant." Nora Kittredge sat at the far end of the table with her snowpack notes spread in front of her. Luke moved between the patrol room and the conference room, bringing printed logs and trying not to make jokes for once. Rhea Fallon Briggs arrived with animal control files clipped into neat stacks. Marin came in later from the medical room, smelling faintly of antiseptic and puppy formula, and set 5 updated veterinary intake sheets beside Rhea's paperwork. Warren stood near the window, not at the head of the table. That mattered. Celia had made it clear that he was involved, but this was no longer his case to steer by force of will. He watched snow fall beyond the glass and told himself that was right. The first hour produced little more than clutter, sensor charts, closure updates, staff messages, contractor check-ins, shift notes written in rushed shorthand. Pierce's office had kept records the way nervous people kept closets. Organized enough to look respectable, crowded enough to hide what mattered. Then Nora found the first one. "North Lantern wind loading note," she said, sliding a page toward Celia. "Filed 3 days before Harbor was found." Celia read the note. "Marked for internal review." "Never came to patrol meeting," Nora said. Pierce rubbed his thumb across the money clip. "Internal review doesn't mean ignored." "No," Nora said. "It means put somewhere warm until it stops making noise." Luke brought a printed maintenance gate log next. Sable Mill access had been opened 3 times after official closing hours in the past month. 2 entries listed equipment transfer. 1 listed road inspection. None had matching contractor requests. Rhea set another page down. June Bellwether's call to the front desk was logged as guest noise concern. Warren turned from the window. Marin looked at the line on the paper. "Guest noise?" Rhea's jaw tightened. Caller reported possible dogs near Sable Mill. The note was later closed as no action needed. No action needed. The phrase looked harmless in black ink. That was what made it dangerous. Warren felt the room narrow around those 3 words. No action needed had a way of turning people into background, animals into inconvenience, warnings into paperwork. It did not shout. It did not accuse. It simply closed the door and moved on. His hand went to the scratched black watch on his wrist. Celia saw the motion. "Warren." He looked at her. "Stay with us." He took a breath and let his hand fall. Pierce's voice came low. "You're all acting like someone sat in this office and decided puppies should suffer." Marin's eyes hardened, but Celia lifted one hand before anyone answered. "That may not be what happened," Celia said, "but a pattern can be dangerous without a single dramatic order." Pierce looked away first. The pattern grew through the afternoon. A camera still showed a white box truck entering near the maintenance yard with a magnetic sign on its side. The image was grainy, but the sign did not match Cedarfall's official markings. Eldon Marr's key access matched the same time window. A note from Warren about late-night movement on the service road had been forwarded to resort operations, then closed with the phrase "vendor confirmed," though no vendor name appeared beside it. A lift mechanic had reported hearing sounds near the old warehouse road and later amended the note to wildlife. No single page told the whole truth. Together they began to. Pierce grew paler with each record. Anger had kept him upright in the beginning. By mid-afternoon, anger had run out of fuel, leaving only exhaustion and fear. He asked to speak with Warren outside the conference room. Celia allowed it, but left the door open. Pierce stood in the narrow hallway beneath an old framed photograph of Cedarfall Ridge from 30 years earlier. In it, a younger Pierce stood beside his father under the original lodge sign, both men smiling in falling snow. The resort had looked smaller then, more fragile. Maybe it had always been fragile, and Pierce had spent his life pretending otherwise. "You think I don't care what happened to those dogs?" Pierce said. Warren did not answer. Pierce turned the money clip once, then stopped. "My father built this place out of debt, weather, and stubbornness. He missed birthdays for it. He kept half the town employed when the mill closed. Every winter I hear the same question from every bank, every investor, every vendor waiting on payment. Will Cedarfall make it this year? That question doesn't make warnings disappear. I know that. Do you? Pierce's face tightened, not with insult but with the effort of not breaking. A manager makes choices. If I close terrain too often, guests stop coming. If guests stop coming, people lose work. If people lose work, they lose houses, insurance, dignity. You think safety is clean because it sounds noble. It isn't. It has invoices. Warren looked at the photograph behind him. My job has invoices too, he said. They just come later. Pierce lowered his eyes. Warren's voice stayed quiet. You didn't choose less harm. You chose the harm that was easiest not to see. For a moment, Pierce looked as if he might argue. Then he said nothing. Inside the conference room, Celia moved from records to people. Eldon Marr was brought in through the side door to avoid the guests in the lodge. He looked smaller without the maintenance yard around him. His brown canvas jacket was unzipped, gray mustache damp from snow, heavy key ring placed on the table in a clear evidence tray. The key with blue tape around the head lay on top. Eldon stared at it as if it belonged to someone else. Celia sat across from him with her notebook open. You opened Sable Mill access after hours on these dates. Eldon shook his head. Equipment runs. For which contractor? Don't remember. Celia placed the camera still on the table. This truck was not on the approved vendor list. Eldon's eyes flicked toward Pierce, then away. Celia noticed. She noticed everything. No one here can help you by pretending the paper says something it doesn't, she said. Eldon's hands folded together. They were big hands, cracked from cold and years of work. He looked less like a villain than like a man who had spent too long telling himself he was only bending rules, never breaking anything important. He said it was kennel equipment, Eldon muttered. Celia waited. Man from over in Calver County. Knew my cousin. Said he needed a place to hold crates overnight before transport. Paid cash. Wasn't supposed to be animals left there long. Marin's jaw tightened. You heard them. Eldon closed his eyes. Warren felt Luke go still beside the wall. I heard something, Eldon said. Not much. Could been a radio. Could been coyotes. Could been anything. But you knew, Celia said. Eldon opened his eyes, and shame sat plainly in them. I knew enough not to ask. The room went quiet. That was worse than a confession shouted in anger. It was ordinary, small, human, the kind of weakness that could fit into any town and wear any work coat. With Eldon's statement, June's report, the camera stills, the key logs, and the evidence from North Lantern, Celia had enough to request a warrant for the old Sable Mill warehouse. Warren was present when the gate opened, but he did not touch it. That was Celia's rule, and this time he followed it without being reminded. Sheriff Daniel Rusk arrived with 2 deputies, a broad man in his early 60s, whose calm had the weight of long winters and longer county meetings. He spoke briefly with Celia, nodded to Rhea and Marin, then authorized the team to proceed according to the warrant. No one rushed. No one kicked anything open for effect. The truth did not need theater. The warehouse smelled of coal dust, old oil, and damp wood. Light came through gaps in the boards in thin white lines. Along one wall, investigators found empty plastic transport crates, several lengths of nylon cord, rolls of blue tape, and feed receipts from different towns. Rhea photographed temporary tags similar to the ones found near harbor. Celia bagged documents connected to a supposed rescue transport group that did not appear in state records. Nothing in the room was loud. That made it feel colder. Warren stood just inside the doorway and let others work. He thought of harbor under the snow. Bramble, flint, aspen, and ridge pressed together beneath roots. June's phone call marked as noise. Nora's report marked internal. His own note marked vendor confirmed. The reports had not disappeared. They had only been put away by people who wanted the day to continue. By evening, the official picture had begun to form. Rhea identified the 5 puppies as living victims in a local and inter-county unlawful transport and neglect case. The suspected transporter was being sought through vehicle records, feed purchases, and Eldon's statement. Eldon faced charges connected to unauthorized property access, false statements, and his role in allowing the use of Sable Mill. Pierce was suspended from operational control, while the county reviewed resort safety decisions and reporting practices. Warren did not walk away untouched. Celia told him in the conference room after the others left. "You'll have an internal review," she said. He nodded once. "For Harbor. For removing him from the scene before animal control arrived. Even with body cam and medical need. It won't erase what you did right, but it has to be addressed." Warren looked toward the dark window. His reflection stared back. Navy uniform, tired eyes, scratched watch. "I know. You'll also lose independent winter command authority until the review is complete." That landed harder than he expected. For a few seconds he felt the old defensiveness rise. He had saved Harbor. He had stopped Hollow Pass. He had listened when others had not. Then he thought of Eldon saying, "I knew enough not to ask." Self-protection could sound righteous when a man was tired. Warren nodded again. "Fair." Celia studied him for a moment. "That might be the first useful thing you've said all week." He almost smiled. Night had settled by the time he returned to the cabin. Marin was there, sitting on the floor near the stove, her sleeves pushed up as she checked Aspen's breathing. The 5 puppies slept in a loose pile of towels and warmth. Bramble tucked against Harbor's shoulder. Flint had one paw across a shoelace he had apparently claimed as property. Ridge slept half on top of a folded blanket. Harbor lifted his head when Warren entered, then lowered it again, satisfied with the count. Marin looked up. "They're going to live." Warren took that in carefully. "All of them?" "All of them, if they keep improving. But recovery is not a straight road." "No," he said. "It never is." He sat beside the stove without taking off his jacket. For a while neither of them spoke. Outside, snow tapped gently against the windows. Inside, 5 small bodies breathed in uneven but steady rhythm. Warren opened the Foster log and wrote the evening entry. Harbor resting, Bramble warmer, Flint alert, Aspen steady, Ridge still climbing in sleep. He paused, then added another line. "No action needed is not the same as nothing wrong." Marin read it over his shoulder but did not comment. Warren looked at Harbor and understood something he wished he had learned years earlier. Justice was not only finding the person at fault. It was making a town stop hiding behind soft phrases, delayed reports, and convenient uncertainty. It was making everyone, including himself, answer for the moment they had known enough to ask one more question, and chose not to. Cedarfall Ridge did not open all at once. It opened carefully. That was the first change people noticed. The main lodge lit its windows again 3 mornings after the Hollow Pass slide. But the upper terrain stayed quiet behind new rope lines and clearer signs. Hollow Pass Road reopened only after county crews, ski patrol, and road maintenance cleared and inspected the slope above it. Sable Mill access remained locked, this time with a new electronic gate, a camera angled at the entry, and a policy posted in plain language where every employee could see it. No after-hours access without a logged purpose. No unlisted vehicles. No verbal approvals. No report closed without a second review. The words were not poetic. Warren liked that. Poetry had its place, but procedures kept people from pretending later that no one had known what to do. Inside the ski patrol room, the wall map had changed too. Nora Kittredge had added a new red-bordered section for layered warnings. Snowpack notes, road reports, maintenance observations, animal control calls, and local tips now sat in the same review column. No single note could disappear into someone's desk because it sounded small. Nora stood in front of the map with her red jacket open, avalanche probe, leaning beside the table as always. She looked at the new system for a long while, then glanced at Warren. "It's ugly," she said. "It works." "I didn't say it didn't." Warren almost smiled. Luke Danton Bell was taping a laminated radio checklist near the door, his orange carabiner clicking against the table every time he leaned forward. "For the record, I think this place has never looked more official." Nora looked at the crooked tape. "Then straighten it before the mountain loses confidence in us." Luke peeled it off with a sigh. "The mountain is very judgmental. It has earned the right." The patrol room felt different with voices in it. Not light exactly, but steadier. People were still tired. The resort had lost money. Guests had canceled. Reporters had called. Lawyers had begun using careful language. The investigation was not over, but the old silence had been broken. Pierce Hallowell resigned from operational management on a gray afternoon when snow fell without wind. He did it in the staff room, not from behind a press release. Housekeepers, lift mechanics, shuttle drivers, instructors, kitchen staff, and patrol workers stood with paper cups of coffee in their hands, while he faced them in a plain dark wool coat without the Cedarfall logo. For the first time Warren could remember, Pierce was not holding the silver money clip. It lay on the table beside him. "My father built this resort," Pierce said, his voice quieter than the room expected. "I told myself I was protecting what he left behind. I told myself that if I kept Cedarfall open, I was protecting all of you." No one interrupted. Pierce looked toward the window, where the lower slopes shone white beneath a pale sky. "But I let fear decide which warnings deserved to be heard. I made slow answers look responsible. I made quiet look safe. It wasn't." His eyes moved to Nora, then Celia, then Warren. "I did not leave those dogs on that mountain, but I helped create a place where someone believed a small wrong could be passed through without anyone stopping it. That is on me." Warren had expected anger from the staff. Some of it was there. Of course it was. People had lost shifts. People were frightened. People wanted someone to blame cleanly because clean blame was easier than shared repair. But there was also grief. Cedarfall Ridge was not just a business. It was winter work, family history, old photographs, first jobs, unpaid overtime, coffee before sunrise, and the smell of wet gloves drying by the heater. Pierce had loved it. He had simply loved it in the way frightened men sometimes love things, by trying to control the story around them. After the meeting, Pierce stopped beside Warren near the hallway. "I'm staying through the transition," Pierce said. "If the county allows it, no authority, just records, contacts, whatever they need." Warren studied him. "Responsibility doesn't always look like leaving," Pierce said. "No," Warren replied. "Sometimes it looks like staying where people can ask questions." Pierce nodded once. The words seemed to cost him, but he accepted them. Later that week, Mavis Holt Greer placed a hand-painted sign in the diner window that read, "Road Krause, Patrol, Kankti, and Rescue Staff. Coffee on the house until we run out or come to our sense." No one knew which would happen first. The diner filled with the kind of conversations Cedarfall had avoided for years. Not loud ones, necessary ones. A shuttle driver admitted he had seen unfamiliar vehicles near maintenance, but assumed someone else had cleared them. A lift mechanic said reports sometimes felt like troublemaking. A housekeeper said guests complained more about caution signs than ice on walkways, and after a while, staff learned which complaints management wanted to hear. Mavis listened from behind the counter, red thermos beside the register, silver hair pinned low. When Warren came in for coffee, she poured it before he asked. "I was scared you'd cost us the season," she said. "You still might be right. I'm still scared." She pushed the mug toward him. "But I'm more scared of us learning to keep quiet because payroll depends on it." Warren looked around the diner. Adults in work coats sat shoulder to shoulder. Some were angry, some were relieved, some were embarrassed by what they had chosen not to notice. For once the town did not feel united by pretending. It felt united by repair. The puppies healed in small, unglamorous increments. Bramble and Aspen stayed at Marin's clinic for closer monitoring. Bramble remained cautious, watching every hand before accepting comfort, while Aspen learned that the sound of Marin's voice meant warmth, food, and safety. Flint went home with Luke under temporary foster paperwork after chewing through 2 shoelaces, 1 glove cuff, and a corner of the laminated checklist Luke had been proud of for exactly 6 hours. "I think he's trying to improve the document," Luke told Warren. "He's trying to eat it." Feedback comes in many forms. Ridge entered Rhea's evaluation program, though Rhea refused to let anyone call him a future community dog yet. "He is 4 months old and thinks a folded towel is a mountain," she said. "Let him become a dog before you give him a resume." Harbor stayed with Warren. At first only on paper, emergency foster custody became extended foster. Extended foster became a home visit. The home visit became Rhea standing in Warren's cabin with her clipboard, pretending not to notice that Harbor's crate had been replaced by a soft bed near Warren's boots. "You understand adoption is permanent," Rhea said. Warren looked down. Harbor, stronger now, had one paw resting on Warren's boot, the right ear still folded slightly at the tip. His amber eyes were clearer, steadier, less haunted by cold. "I understand." Rhea signed the form. Marin, standing by the stove with her red field notebook tucked under one arm, smiled without making it too large. Warren appreciated that. Some moments were easier to survive when no one applauded them. His internal review ended 2 weeks after Hollow Pass. It did not absolve him completely, and Warren did not ask it to. The report acknowledged the medical urgency of removing Harbor from the snow, the body camera, record, and the immediate veterinary need. It also stated that future recoveries involving possible evidence required faster animal control notification and clearer scene transfer. Warren accepted the finding. In the meeting with Celia, Sheriff Daniel Rusk, Nora, and the town chief, he did something that surprised even himself. He spoke first. "I used procedure as a wall," he said. Celia looked up from her notebook. Warren kept his hands still on the table. "After my old K9 died, I told myself clean reports were the only thing I could trust. Then Harbor came along, and I nearly swung the other way. I wanted to trust instinct so badly that I almost forgot why clean process matters. No one rushed to comfort him. That helped. I don't want to be the only person hearing warnings," Warren said. "That's how things get missed or dismissed. We need a system that makes small signals stand together." Nora leaned back in her chair, layered reports. "Across departments," Warren said. "Ski patrol, police, resort operations, animal control, road crew, local witnesses. 1 small note stays a note. 3 small notes become review. 5 become action." Celia wrote that down. Luke later named it before anyone could stop him. "Harbor Protocol," he said in the patrol room. Warren stared at him. "No," Nora nodded slowly. "Unfortunately, it's clear. It sounds like a tourist brochure." "It sounds like something people will remember," Marin said. That ended the argument. By the end of the month, Harbor Protocol was not official law, but it had become official practice at Cedarfall Ridge. Reports could no longer be softened into nothing, because each piece alone seemed too small. A strange vehicle at a closed gate, a dog herd where no dog should be, a wind note from patrol, a road crack, a sensor trend below threshold, a citizen call, a maintenance log that did not match a schedule. Small things had to be placed where they could be seen together. On a bright morning after the storm cycle finally passed, Warren stood outside the lodge while sunlight spread over the slopes. The air was cold and clean. New warning signs stood at the trailheads. The Hollow Pass closure board had been rebuilt with plain wording. Sable Mill access was locked behind a gate that no longer depended on one tired man's judgment and a ring of keys. Harbor stood beside Warren, black and tan coat bright against the snow, dark saddle slightly uneven along his back, right ear still marked by its folded tip. He was not fully grown yet, not fully recovered from what the mountain had taken out of him, but he stood with a quiet steadiness that made Warren feel less alone in his own body. The radio on Warren's shoulder crackled. "Kittredge to Unit 2. Wind shifting west at Hollow Pass. No active instability. Request routine check in 10. Luke's voice followed. "Shuttle holding at lower loop until you clear it. Also Flint stole my spare glove." Not relevant, but emotionally significant. Celia came on last. "Row to Alder. Keep the update clean." Warren looked down at Harbor. The dog looked toward the road, then back at him. Warren keyed the radio. "Unit 2 responding." He opened the passenger door of the patrol vehicle. Harbor climbed in carefully, stronger than before, but still learning his body again. He circled once on the seat, then laid his muzzle across Warren's old black glove. Warren stood for a moment with one hand on the open door. Across the base area, adults moved through the snow with skis, coffee, work bags, toolboxes, clipboards, and quiet purpose. Cedarfall Ridge was still beautiful, still fragile, still dependent on weather, money, people, and choices made before anyone knew they mattered. The mountain had not become kinder. It had not forgiven them. It did not need to. As Warren drove slowly past the lodge, past the pines, past the new signs bright against the snow, he understood that listening was not the same as fear. Listening was respect. Listening was responsibility. Listening was what kept a warning from becoming a regret. Harbor lifted his head as the patrol vehicle turned toward Hollow Pass. This time, when the mountain spoke in small ways, Warren was not the only one ready to hear it. Sometimes the smallest warnings are the ones heaven sends before the storm becomes too loud to ignore. Warren did not save Cedarfall because he was fearless. He saved it because he finally stopped dismissing the quiet signs. A weak breath under the snow, a dog that would not look away, a report that should not have been buried, and a truth too small for some people to respect. In our own lives, it may be the same. A gentle nudge, a worried feeling, a person who needs one more call, one more question, one more act of care. Grace often begins quietly. May we all learn to listen before regret has to raise its voice. If this story touched your heart, share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories of loyalty, courage, and second chances, please subscribe and stay with us for the next one.